Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm super excited. Everybody knows that how much I love bees and pollinators, and my friends always get after me because I'm slow to go for a walk with because I stop and pet the bees. I am super excited though. When I first started this project in 2020 during quarantine, one of the people that I intersected with on the internet and connected with was Dakota Honey, and I got to talk to them, and they were very new in their business at the time, and I learned so much about bees. And now I love watching their business grow and how it's expanded and changed over the few years on Facebook, and so that's super awesome. But today I have the opportunity to talk to another beekeeper in another county. So this is a first. We're going to be talking to Stephanie from Jackson County, which I've driven through, but I don't know how much I visited anything there. So she's going to have to answer me a few questions about what is it like living in Jackson County, South Dakota. So I'm excited to bring on the screen. Hello, Stephanie.
Hello, Jenny.
Hello. So first thing we're going to establish, because that was my first question for you, beekeeping for you is a hobby, not your full-time
It is a
business,
hobby.
right? And for anybody not familiar with South Dakota, tell us, is Jackson County East or West River?
West River. I have only lived here 2 years and some change, and I already said that with so much pride.
Yes, because you're originally an East Coast person?
Yes, Maryland.
What made you want to come to South Dakota?
That is the question I get asked the most. They're like, why in the world would you come here? So I'm a career educator. So I'm a backyard beekeeper, but my profession is teaching. I'm an empty nester. And when my children left the nest out on their own, I actually taught overseas for a little while. And even before returning to the States, I decided that I wanted to continue to learn and have and I'm very passionate about my teaching, don't get me wrong, but it can be an important vehicle for life experiences that I wouldn't have had otherwise. It opens a lot of doors. And so even before I left or came back to the States, I decided that I wanted to teach at a tribal school. And that meant casting a really wide net because there are reses all over the country.
Right.
So I did. I am a high school science teacher, which means I'm kind of in demand, if I do say so myself. And I had a lot.
Do you have to cover all the sciences, or do you focus on a specific?
My school's real small, so I am the high school science teacher. So any science that's taught in high school is taught by me.
Even like health sciences? Are you telling people about the birds and the bees in every possible way?
Our PE teacher does a version of health, but I kind of, as the biology teacher, end up doing
a little more,
maybe a lot more.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of interviews. I had been to South Dakota before. I had been to South Dakota twice before because years ago I lived in Seattle. And the first time I had ever been to South Dakota was in the summertime and just skirted through the Black Hills. We were on our way to a wedding in Colorado, and so the detour to South Dakota was deliberate. The next time was when we were moving back east, and it was wintertime.
Oh, so you saw both sides before you decided to come here?
Most definitely. In fact, I had this very vivid memory of it being the coldest I'd ever been in my life. Being in Mitchell, where you are right now, and going out, we were at a motel, so the door opened to the outside. Going into the car to start it up in the morning, opening up that door, and I swear to you, the wind slapped me through my face. So that, and I am sorry to say that the other indelible memory of South Dakota was the blatant racism.
Okay. Very true and very real.
And never imagined I'd be back here living. I've lived, my father was in the military. I grew up all over the world.
Okay.
I have lived in some amazing places. I've seen some of the literal wonders of the world. South Dakota, especially here in the Badlands, is one of the most beautiful places I've ever lived.
I love the Badlands. I really do. My heart will always be in my hometown and in the river. And like the core of my core memories is growing up right on the Big Sioux and playing on the rocks and experiencing all that. But I do love to go to the Badlands, and it's amazing. Everybody goes out there and hikes around and takes their pictures on the scenic thing. You need to hike out a little farther and just stand with your hands on the walls, because it's millenniums of energy out there, and it is our desert. So as somebody with like rheumatoid conditions, people always want to move all the way to the deserts because that feels better. That is a desert climate, and so I always feel just like electrified when I'm there. So I think
the irony that millions of years ago it was an ocean.
Yes.
And now it's, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's definitely what, if you go a little further, go off the route that curves through there, there's some really breathtaking views that the tourists aren't seeing,
And how?
And the locals don't take pictures because we're gatekeeping it,
So you're really not kidding when you talk about off the beaten path. It might go without saying, but just to clarify, I do live here on so I mean, you say Jackson County, and it's, and I always think of how I live on the Oglala Lakota Nation.
Right.
Yeah. And, but yes, so the school where I teach and live, this very small community, we are in the Badlands, and it's not the park. And so sometimes you'll see Facebook notifications where people tell you to watch out and they show you a picture of a mountain lion that's just chilling in their front yard.
Yep. Have you ever seen a Sasquatch out there?
Not yet.
I did an interview with Bigfoot South Dakota, the group that hunts them in South Dakota, and they have me convinced that first of all, that we have Bigfoot by Renner in Sioux Falls, which is pretty much in town, but also that there's definitely some activity out there, and I'm like, I want to camp, I want to do an interview with a Bigfoot. So
my neighbors will tell you. Oh yeah. My neighbors will tell you, when I first moved here, I was kind of given the lowdown, don't whistle at night. Don't look directly at owls. Mm-hmm. If you hear a baby crying, don't go and check it out.
Right. And if you see lights reflecting in the dark, you don't need to know what they're doing. You just need to go back in the house.
Mind your own business. Just keep on keeping on.
Yep. Even over here on the east side, I'm cornfields freak me out because it's like corn talks. And yeah.
I know it sweats. I did not know that until I lived out here, but I now know it sweats.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's as glamorous as it sounds.
So the town, so you live in town, not outside of town, correct?
Yeah, a small, teeny little town here on the res.
And you keep bees. So have these bees traveled the world with you, or did you start that?
No, these bees are actually the school apiary that I set up.
Oh, that's even cooler. You didn't tell me that part.
Sorry.
That's awesome. So the kids get to help take care of the bees?
And this is the part that you're gonna, but again, there's no reason to not do the interview, because I have been keeping bees for about 23 years now only in 2 different states, in Maryland and now here. And there's a learning curve when you go to a different environment.
Different region.
And so when I first, actually before I had even established our apiary, word had gotten around with that I was a beekeeper, and so I actually mentored about 8 adults here on the res. And so and it's in with beekeeping, it's livestock. And anyone who's from here understands that. It's livestock. You're going to have good years, you're going to have bad years. Sometimes it is because of human error. Other times it's because of the environment.
Right.
So of the 8 I mentored, I'd say 6 are still doing it, and a couple have had some rough years, but they still keep on going. You know, their first year out of the gates had complete dead outs. They replaced their bees, and they're still going because you learn from these things.
Right.
Well, some things are out of our control. The 2 hives that belong to the school that are behind the school that were placed perfectly, that I set up for every success in the world. I started, they did put up quite a bit of honey over the summer, way more than I was ever expecting.
Oh, wow.
But I still also gave them sugar syrup just to be sure, as I was like, I am in this brand new environment. I'm going to kind of overshoot the mark when it comes to taking care of these bees. I put something around the hives called hive wrap to insulate them. And up into about the middle of January, they were doing fine. I could not check on them weekly because of temperatures. Right. I had to check on them only. You definitely don't want to open a hive when it's below freezing.
When you mentioned because of temperatures, it's not because none of us wanted to go out in January. It was for anybody watching this, not from here or watching it in the future. Look at what our winter cast was. It was a few years ago, we had deadly snow depths and we had deadly cold this winter. And it's not because of you, it's because it would have hurt the bees, right?
Without a doubt. Bees keep the inside of their hive constant temperature of about 98 degrees year round. They flap their wings to cool in the summer if it's necessary, right? And they shiver in the winter to keep things warm. And if you open up that hive and it's negative 21, and you, Jenny, know I'm not exaggerating when I say that those temperatures absolutely happen here and they can be sustained. Mm-hmm. So when you open up the hive in those kind of temperatures, you could kill the entire hive really, really quickly.
Yeah, probably seconds to minutes.
For sure. So there's a window in which I can check them, and that's the temperature should ideally be about 60 degrees, but anything above 40, you're safe. 40 and above, and that's all Fahrenheit. And so up until about mid-January, before things really plummeted, I was doing about weekly checks as often as I could. And they were doing great, just great. And they were slurping down their sugar syrup and they were fine. And then, and you know this too, mm-hmm. What happened after those 3 to 4-ish really cold weeks?
We had that weird high spike. And then it dropped again.
That's what killed them. When I did the check, I had seen something and I knew exactly what I was seeing only because of experience, but not because I'd ever seen it before. I get up to the hive. There are a whole bunch of dead bees on the front of each entryway.
They thought they could go outside.
I already knew what I was seeing. I opened up their covers. There were dead bees around the back of the hives, on the sides of the hives, on the upper. There are 2 covers. There's an outer cover and an inner cover. They were on top of the inner cover. Like you said, we had the temperature went just high enough that they were like, "Hey, let's go outside." Mm-hmm. They were doing what bees naturally do, which are called cleansing flights. They empty their bowel. When they're stuck inside, they don't empty their bowel. Right. So they're doing that. But on top of that, they were wasting valuable energy foraging for forage that didn't exist.
And then they couldn't get warm again.
You can't keep them in. There's no way to do that. It's not possible. And as you well know, in the winter, the days are so stinking short that even though it was warm enough for them to fly, it didn't stay warm enough for them to get back and get down, hunker down and get back into their cluster. So it was that I knew exactly what I was seeing as I was seeing it. As you can imagine, I was by myself, and it's a very good thing because the stream of profanity was rather thick.
So did you lose all the bees?
2 complete dead outs.
Oh, including the queens.
If there's no other worker bees to keep her alive, she dies. She perishes with them. She doesn't leave the hive, but again, she didn't have them surrounding her. The 2 queens didn't have all of their worker bees surrounding them. The winter cluster is roughly the size of a football, and again, it for the most part centers itself in the hive with the bee in the center of the cluster. And when a whole bunch, not all the bees, but when most of the bees, the older bees, went out to forage, it just messed everything up. This happens. So it's not to scare you off of beekeeping and your desire to pursue this hobby, but it's an important reminder to know that it's livestock, and you are from South Dakota. You are surrounded by people who have had their agricultural ups, downs, lows that are the lowest low that non-agricultural people could not possibly understand.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's on a micro scale as a hobbyist beekeeper.
But it's still the same concept. It's like when the flooding happened and my brother lost all the goats.
Oh, God.
And so, it just, because there was no source of feed, there was nowhere to keep them. We were lucky that they didn't all die, but they had to be auctioned. There was the recovery from the flooding would have taken so long, or they would have starved.
For sure.
So how did the kids take it?
I used it as a teachable moment.
Okay.
They were disappointed. And that was the thing too. I would always do my winter checks without them, just in case I had dead outs, because I did not want them to have to. It's rough enough on me, and I've been doing this a long time. Not my first dead outs. It's the exception rather than the rule, but it's always sad.
Mm-hmm.
And, I, again, used it to explain to them that it is agricultural, and agriculture is fickle.
Exactly.
But also in a much more broader sense, and this drives things home even more. Those spikes in temperatures that are happening in January shouldn't be happening. They're happening because of global climate change.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
should have been able to hibernate till March.
Without a doubt. And when people say save the bees, unfortunately, marketing means well, and they use honeybees as the poster child for this movement.
Mm-hmm. But it's the ground bees, right?
Honeybees are actually doing fine. They're doing fine. We've had, once again, our ups and our downs. There are different things that can affect bees. There are fungal infections that can affect bees. There are bacterial infections. There are insect parasites that can affect them. Different things. And
pesticides.
Time and again, most definitely, pesticide and herbicide use. But the pollinators that are truly, truly, truly in peril are all of the different species of native bees. And there are wasps that pollinate, butterflies, moths, there are beetles. Thank you for knowing that. There are beetles that pollinate in the tropics. There are even like some monkeys that pollinate. And there are also a lot of plants out here that are wind pollinated. All grasses are wind pollinated. Corn is a grass.
Right.
But again, though, pollinators are, so when people say, no bees, no life, I do prefer, and I know I'm a teacher, so please forgive me for being pedantic, but
pollinators.
But it's pollinators as a whole. And The more we learn about pollinators, the more we learn how many there are. Again, you probably already knew too, hummingbirds are pollinators.
Mm-hmm.
The more we learn, the more we're like, oh my goodness, that mammal's a pollinator. That's a pollinator. That's a pollinator.
And
And
there are so many birds and wildlife that they're not pollinators, but they're seed movers.
most definitely.
That's where it's the ducks and geese that come back to my place every year that bring me new plants,
Oh,
because they're coming with them. So,
and this is how it happens. So the bees will get replaced. We will rebuild.
the queen shall rise again.
I had told the kids at the outset, and again, I have the advantage of having so many years of experience that I told the kids at the outset, hey, we probably might get some honey the first summer, but that you just pretend it doesn't even exist. Don't bank on it.
Mm-hmm.
Things don't get truly established for a few years.
Right.
Just like any kind of agriculture.
What's the duration of to put it in like fifth grade terms, the life cycle of a bee? How long does a bee live? How long?
Oh no, that's not fifth grade terms. So you've gotten me started because when it comes to fun facts about bees, I have way too many. There are actually two different, now here where we have 4 seasons. In the tropics, it's a little different. They keep bees year round, right, and all. But here where there's 4 seasons, we have spring, summer bees and fall, winter bees, and they're genetically different.
Okay.
In the tropics, it's spring, summer bees year round. Spring, summer bees can live 3 to 6 weeks.
Okay. And that includes the queen?
She's in a class of her own.
Okay.
So she has her own category. Fall, winter bees, because they have to make it through the winter, the queen will lay those eggs at the very tail end of summer. They'll hatch. They become the bees that have to live through the winter. If they're going to live through the winter, they have the ability to live through the winter. Fall, winter bees live 3 to 6 months. It's the 3 to 6 rule. Okay. And the queen can live 3 to 6 years.
Oh, really? A 6-year-old bee.
However, a good beekeeper can't let her live more than 3 years at the absolute max because she runs out of fertilized eggs.
And so then she won't have anyone to take care of her.
That if you leave, now there is a ton of wisdom in beekeeping. We are very big into mentoring. So when I first learned about beekeeping, I started going to my county beekeeper association meetings. It was me and a bunch of old white men. Back then, there would still make the distinction between beekeepers and lady beekeepers. Now we're all just beekeepers. And my mentor, his name was Mark, he had been mentoring me about 9 months. Actually, it was probably a year and some change when he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. We all, it went fast. And he knew it. We all knew it. And he said to me, God, Stephanie, and he was, part of the reason he asked me to, if I would have him as my mentor was he lived super close to me, but also he goes, I have daughters your age. He was a good guy. And he said, Stephanie, there's so much I still have to tell you, all of the ups and downs. And he said, I've been racking my brain with how to put it, to encapsulate everything that I want to tell you. And he said, this is the best I got for you, kid. Most of the time, the bees do best when you just leave them the hell alone.
Yeah. Because bees were here without us. Bees do their thing.
Then he's absolutely right. And in 99.9% of the time, that is stone cold truth. The other 1% or 0.1% of the time, you have to do some management. And that management involves something called requeening. So if you leave it to chance, they will probably create their own queen. But then you have two queens in the same hive. And here's why you don't want that. Fun fact number 2, incoming. Queens do have a stinger.
I was going to say, are you going to tell me they fight to the death?
Oh, yes. And how they do it is not something you're not going to guess this. I swear. It's very unqueen-like. When it comes to human queens, we shouldn't anthropomorphize them.
Right.
So when you have two queens in the hive, you can't have that. You simply cannot. There can only be one.
Right.
So the queen has, now back up, you probably know that honeybees have a barbed stinger. And our skin is 7 layers. It's a 7-layer tissue. So when a bee sticks her stinger into us and she tries to pull it back out, it stays. And it pulls a lot of her entrails out with it. And she either dies a slow, painful death, or you very quickly put her out of her misery. You stomp on her or whatever. And so that's why bees are reluctant to sting us. Wasps have a smooth stinger. They can sting and sting again, but we'll leave wasps for another day. Drone bees, the boy bees, and we'll talk more about them in a minute, they don't have a stinger at all. They don't.
There are bees without stingers?
Boy bees don't need stingers because that's not their job. They don't protect the hive. They're not guard bees, none of that. They don't have a stinger. There's no point in putting energy into growing a stinger. They don't have stingers. Boy bees don't have stingers. The queen stinger is smooth. So ostensibly, she can sting you more than once, but the queen is actually one of the most gentle bees in the hive. Unless there's another queen in town.
I pet bees all the time. Like
the queen,
touch bees and get bees on me and it doesn't bother me.
Because they're bees. They're not wasps. Bees have fur.
Yeah.
Bees have fur. Wasps don't. So the queens, in order to you got two queens and they're sparring. The queen can't just go up to her opponent and sting her because that other opponent will sting back and then they'll both die, right? They're equally armed. So they poop into their leg and they throw their poo at their opponent's face in hopes of blinding her so they can then hold her down and sting her. I swear to you, I am not making this up.
Why did I never learn this in school? That is
fantastic. As the year draws to a close, which we're coming into the time where I'm going to start really, really hitting bee information hard and heavy with the kids because this kind of stuff keeps them engaged at the end of the year when they've got the spring fever.
Oh my, they fling their poo and then stab their blinded opponent to death.
I told you it wasn't very royal.
I think it's extremely royal. I think it's extremely like barbarian queens. I like it.
There you go. It is true. Yeah. I mean, we're giving them more credit. These are folks who bathe once a year on their birthday, I think.
maybe human women need to take some advice from them. I don't, I'm going to think on that. When you said, gosh, you just said something about boy bees. Oh, no. I know in mammals that fur is one thing and hair is another.
Fur. Bees have fur.
It's fur. How do you delineate that it's fur and not a hair or a...
It's not ever growing.
Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, older bees, a lot of their fur is kind of worn off.
Okay.
Yeah. And part of the reason they have the fur, of course, is that, they live year round and it's to help them withstand temperature drops.
Right. But they also sometimes move pollen with it.
Oh, most definitely. Without a doubt. The pollen is statically attracted to their fur. And then on the upper portion of their furthest back legs,
They have their
there's a
basket.
little indentation. It looks like a thigh, but it's actually something called a pollen basket. And that's where they also put their pollen. So this is why, though, back to the queens, why it's not good to leave it to chance. Yes, your hive has the ability to requeen, but what if your original queen wins?
And she's 8.
Then you're, once again, you're back to having the queen with diminishing laying ability, and the hive is diminishing around her. So what we do is you buy a queen from a queen breeder, or you get into queen breeding yourself, which is not something I've ever done, but I know plenty of people who have. You buy a queen from a queen breeder, and we're talking about a $40, $45 insect.
That's crazy.
Worth every penny. She will, you either go and pick her up from your local breeder, or she can come through the mail. And
how do you package a bee?
She'll come in a little box that has 5 or 6 attendant bees. And
she
don't have any queen cages available here in this house, but otherwise I'd show you. Actually, maybe I do, but I would have to be like bringing you into my dark garage and rummaging. But it's not quite the dimensions of a matchbox, but it's not a whole lot bigger than a matchbox. It has screen on both sides. One side has a little cork in it, and the other side has a solid fondant sugar candy. And the attendant bees will feed the queen the sugar candy. And they remove her waist and all.
I just have this medieval vision of a queen in a carriage with her little attendants rolling along with her. And
when you see the queen moving through the hive, she's always got her attendants around her. And if for some reason her attendants got distracted or separated from her, she then pipes to them. And it's this little trill, this little
and then they come back.
And they come back.
And those are male bees?
They're all female.
All female. Ladies in waiting.
The males don't really do any work. Okay, so I guess we're at the part now where I get to tell you about the one job that males do. Their one and only, their raison d'etre, their whole reason for existence.
Bee sex.
Exactly right. Yeah, drones in the spring. So the queen begins laying eggs like around March, when the first pollen sources come out, the earliest pollen sources. And the workers will feed her pollen, and the pollen is bee protein, honey is their carbohydrate.
Okay.
And so the workers will feed her pollen, and that will begin to stimulate her laying. The bee year doesn't go by temperature. The bee year goes by day length.
Oh. So even if they're in the hive, they're aware of the day length?
Most certainly are. Yeah.
And is that just something internal to them?
They have, again, when things warm up enough that they can move around, they look out. Yeah. The hive itself is dark, but they look outside of the entranceway and all. And so in the spring, when the queen starts laying again, and that's March, that's not, when we're thinking about right now. When she starts laying again, 1, maybe 2% of the larvae that she lay will be unfertilized, and they'll be drones. So drones have a grandfather, but they don't have a father.
That's super weird.
They have a grandfather and a mother. Yeah, that's something that's a little tricky to wrap your brain around. They have a grandfather and a mother. They don't have a father, but they aren't clones of her because they're drones. They're boys, but the boys come from unfertilized eggs.
How do we figure out how to do that for human women too?
Phew, and how? So
why are we bringing back dire wolves when we could be working on bee cloning for us?
Tell you what. So the 1 to 2% of the drones their eyes are much bigger. And as a result, their bodies are a lot, the circumference of their bodies is a lot wider. So they have this real clunkety shape. They're very cute. They look little teddy bearish, and they don't have stingers. When my daughters were young, they could very easily distinguish drones, and they'd play with the drones. And all very gently, of course, but they would play with the drones because they knew they weren't going to get stung. And the drones don't, I always remind everybody, we don't anthropomorphize them. We don't anthropomorphize them. They are bees.
Right.
They're bees. This is a colony, which in a lot of ways, the colony is like an organism. Yeah, they all have to have they're all very, very interdependent.
Because isn't that what like colony collapse and things like that if you lose, they all go. Like it's
the queen goes, the colony goes. What happened with me this winter, I know it wasn't all the bees that died because not every bee is a foraging bee, only the oldest bees, but it was just enough to tip the scales.
And so then the bees that didn't go out, they also died.
Because there weren't enough of them to keep things warm.
To stay warm.
Yeah, they had lost a bulk of their numbers. So, so drones, they wake up in the morning, they get fed by house bees. Their waste gets cleaned up by house bees. They go out flying to find something called a drone alley. This is one of the weirder things where it's like, how do they know? I don't know. Nobody knows.
Right.
They go to these locations. Now, back east, the ones that I have seen, and believe it or not, the only reason I knew what I was seeing was because I was a beekeeper. Bees aren't that big.
Right.
If I wasn't a beekeeper, I'd have walked right through this thing, had no idea they were there. So I know they must happen here. I don't know if they're wooded, if they happen in wooded areas, but in back east where we got lots and lots of trees, they prefer to go to the wooded areas, and the bees will go to what they call the drone bees will create something called a drone alley, and they're hovering, and you've got a line of about 4, maybe even 6 bees on one side, 2, 3, 4 drone bees on the other side, and they're all just hovering, kind of looking at each other. They're roughly 4 feet away from each other. And they all just hang out there hovering in the hopes that a queen bee on her virgin flight will just fly by. So,
and then would they follow her, or would they usher her back to their hive?
So I'll tell you what happens in a minute. No, they don't go back to the hive. So when a queen bee first emerges from her cell, all bees, when they first emerge from their cell, their exoskeleton is still really moist. Their wings are moist and kind of crumpled up, and they need a good 24 hours for the exoskeleton and wings to dry out and stiffen up.
Just like butterflies.
Yes, exactly. 24 hours after that happens, the queen is ready to go on her maiden flights. She'll do this for about 2 days. She goes out looking for these drone alleys, and she mates with as many males as she possibly can in that time. Why as many males as possible? For genetic diversity. If one drone is the father of all of her entire colony, and he is a genetic defect, she's screwed. So genetic diversity is incredibly important for guaranteeing the strength and survival of the hive. So in 2 days' time, she mates with as many drones as possible. They mate while flying in midair.
Can you, they always say when you walk through the woods, everybody freaks out if they walk through a spider web. What if you walked into a bee orgy? I don't know that I could handle that.
It would probably be just one queen. I haven't seen them mating before. I know beekeeper friends who have. I've just been walking along, seeing these little guys hovering and been like,
knowing what they're waiting for.
Okay, dudes, I don't know if I should, and when you'll know what I mean by this in a minute, but it's like, I don't know if I should wish you good luck or not. Anyway, so queen bee comes through, and again, they mate while flying. She's flying. They come up behind her. And this is why I'm not sure if I want to wish them good luck or not. The male bee, the drones, their testicles are internal.
Oh.
And when he ejaculates, his testicles explode and he dramatically falls to his death. Ta-da! When I say they have one purpose in their entire lives, I'm not kidding. And if they're alive, they have not fulfilled their one and only purpose in life.
Oh my goodness.
It's a real catch-22. It's like, do you want to fulfill your destiny? Or because, but no, it gets worse. In around September, late August, September, here it's late August. Any drones that have not fulfilled their one and only purpose in life, again, because they don't feed themselves, they don't clean the hive, they don't guard the hive, they don't make wax, they don't raise the babies, they don't make the honey, they don't care for the queen, they don't forage. They are a massive drain. They can't. Exactly. You connected that dot real fast. The females, the workers, drag them to the front entrance, throw them out. The males are very confused. They try to come back in, and it's very sad. It will never not be sad. Just like dead outs are never not sad. But
what a matriarchal hierarchy.
The survival of the colony, the survival of the hive itself depends on being as streamlined as possible.
Yeah.
You cannot have these males consuming limited, invaluable resources, the honey, over the winter when they're not contributing.
Right. And not only not contributing, but taking, which is even worse.
A drain. So they got to go. Because in the spring, the queen will just make more. Yep.
I can see all the teaching moments that you can be imparting upon high school boys. Don't be a drain on society.
I told you we do not anthropomorphize.
Don't just shoot your balls out unexpectedly.
But as you can well imagine, though, I work at a tribal school, and for many of them, from the day they're born, they are infused with an understanding of being a good relative and being a good tribe member. So they relate. Yeah. And the Lakota are matriarchal.
Yeah. That's such a interesting parallel that, I mean, I would have obviously seen the parallel and thought of all the neat ways you could teach that. But yeah, you've got some interesting add-ons that now I'm going to be Googling all night. Tell me, in your area, so now that we know about the bees and how they get through their life there, in your area, like, what are the resources? Obviously,
what do they forage?
Well, yeah, because if you're in the Badlands, like I said, is a desert, like how far do they have to travel?
Honeybees won't go more than 3 miles away from the hive. They can't to forage. Oh, let me also tell you about the workflow. Okay, so when brand new bee, when she's a new bee and first born, once her wings and exoskeleton have dried out, she'll start out as a house bee, and that's just cleaning up, maybe cleaning the waste of the drones, just cleaning up. And then she'll graduate to being a nurse bee. And house bees and nurse bees both make wax. Nothing takes more energy for a bee than to make wax. It takes so many calories of energy to make wax. And they make that from little glands on the lower part of their abdomen. And so then she'll, after being a nurse bee, then she'll graduate to being a guard bee. And Yeah. And me, the beekeeper, my biggest job and again, at the end of the day, bees are actually gentle vegans. They only eat things from plants and they don't want to sting us. They go out of their way. They warn. They'll take their little abdomen with their stinger out. It's extended and they'll wave that thing. They're warning. They're like, yo, beekeeper, you're kind of being clunky. You're being a little bit ham-fisted here. Can you stop that and be a little more gentle? Because you're making me nervous. And so the best way to get stung, I rarely get stung now, although I don't mind. It's good to get at least one sting every 6 months to keep up my own natural immunity. If I don't really swell from bee stings, it takes a lot of bee stings for me to swell. A lot. We're talking about 7 or 8, some in the same location.
What if, can you keep bees inside? Like, could you
Not
have moved
really
all these bees to
observation
a
hives,
closet?
but it still has to have
External
something to go
access.
outside because they've got to go outside for their forage.
So
The oh,
in Sioux
so it's
Falls, in our Washington Pavilion, which used to be a high school and now it's a museum, they I don't know if they still do, because I do know things changed a little bit during COVID, but they had a hive, and it had the tube, you could see the bees flying out, but then inside it's a window, you could watch the bees.
yeah,
I love it.
observation hives are great teaching tools. They're really hard to maintain, super stressful in the bees, but they are great teaching tools.
Why are they
Great teaching
stressful?
tools.
Because they're visible to everything.
Yeah, they're exposed. It's light. It's only one frame depth.
Okay.
And so they're having to move this way more, and it's said this side to side instead of, yeah, they have a lot, they can be noisy and they've got kids looking. Sometimes people tap. Yeah, very stressful. Some of them, even if they've got a window where the sun's angle hits the hive, then it can get overheated very
Okay.
easily. Yeah, so there's a lot of different, or they can get chilled very easily. They're much more vulnerable to all of the ups and downs of the temperatures in an observation hive. So, okay, so the most experienced bees, those are your field bees. Those are the ones. So when you see the bee that is most likely to sting you is the field bee because she's more experienced. The younger newbies, they're really not likely to sting you. It's like they don't even realize they have a stinger. But the field bees are the ones that are most likely to sting you. You might find a girl that went down with her boots on. She might be dead near a flower or in a flower. These are the oldest, most experienced bees. She went out that day and she didn't come home. And that happens. That happens. Here,
Do the other
some of
bees
the
notice? Do you think the other bees know if one of them doesn't return?
in spring and summer, in a really healthy hive, you've got millions of bees.
Okay.
Yeah. So their earliest around here, the earliest pollen sources are when the cottonwoods set their buds.
Okay.
And when you've got, buffalo berry and choke cherry, when they first set their buds, those are some of the earliest pollen sources. We've got daisies coming up here now, and those are really great early pollen sources.
Keep talking. I'm going to plug in.
But some of the wildflowers are definitely starting to chime in. They're making their spring roll call, and so the bees right now they do have a lot of pollen sources that we don't know about. There are, the unsung heroes of the greater food chain are a lot of these plants that a lot of them are endangered. Unfortunately out here, there are so many invasive grasses.
Oh, yeah.
So many. But it's going to take a little while for the yucca to start blooming. But although I could be really wrong about that because I know that there are certain, because there's lots of different species of yucca. Right. And there are certain species of yucca that are only pollinated by moths. Yeah. So I'm not sure if the bees are going to hit those. I haven't seen it happen. I've got some yucca right behind my ear. I haven't seen it happen, but I'm still trying to get familiar with this soapy version of the yucca.
So
Yeah.
does the school have a garden? Do you,
Not yet. Working on it.
and then do you intend to garden specifically plants that support the bees,
No.
or a combination plants that support the families?
Plants that support the families, planting traditional plants, and which would then be natives. Natives always do better.
Mhm.
Heirloom plants, and those just they will be there. They will be a great food source for the pollinators.
They support
But
the
it's
ecosystem.
but yeah, this is about food sovereignty.
Right.
Yeah, and the
Let's segue
Mhm.
to that a little bit. So we've talked about the resources the bees need in your community. Like, how far are you from the next largest town?
The next closest town is 30 minutes away.
How far are you from a big box store like a Walmart?
That's Rapid City, and that's just under 2 hours.
Oh my goodness. Does your town have its own newspaper?
We do not. The Res has the Lakota Times.
Okay.
Yeah, and so there is a store here in our community. And I appreciate you understanding that because where I live is so small, I am not comfortable with saying where I am because it is so
Right.
small.
Right.
Um,
Well,
and
the other thing is too, just like the that's kind of why I've said I wanted to talk to every county and more than one person from each county, because I live in a city that spans two counties, but in the same two counties, there's tiny little towns that are, like you said, 2 hours away from what everybody just thinks there's a Walmart. No, there's not. Like I
mm,
personally know you're at least 2.5 hours away from a Taco John's.
the nearest Taco John's is I think Mission. So that would be like a solid hour.
Oh,
So
I can see the Taco John's from the building I'm in right now.
so what we have here in this community, we have a post office, we have a gas station, we have a community park. There is of course there's an IHS clinic.
Right.
There's community resource buildings. There's our school. There is a store attached to the gas station. And from the outside, I was thinking this was going to be just like a typical gas station store with nothing but junk food. Unfortunately, a good half of this store is junk, but they do have produce.
I think so.
All that to say, the price gouging would
Mhm.
cross your eyes.
Right. And
It's a food desert.
yes, it's not only is it a food desert, but just like your little bees are impacted by weather snaps, you're in the part of South Dakota where, like I said, a couple winters ago, I mean, we had people die because it snowed so bad they couldn't get to them with heat. Like, things went out and people died. And we don't think of those things happening in a modernized country in modern day, but
I know that was before I was here, but I know that they had to medevac people out for their dialysis.
Yep.
And
it is because there are great distances and tremendous weather events.
and it is true. Where we are, because we are in the Badlands, we are in a microclimate. So if there's no snow in the surrounding area, we got snow. If there's a couple few inches in the surrounding area, we've got 6 inches.
Right.
And it does snow here quite a bit more, and we've always got more. And for more days at a stretch. So besides being in a food desert, most people are familiar with the statistics about this res. There's extremely high unemployment.
Right.
A tank of gas to go to Rapid and back to grocery shop, that is prohibitively expensive.
Right.
So they can't go to stores where they would save money because there is no savings to be had.
Exactly.
And this is why food sovereignty is so, it's critically important.
Right.
It's just hugely important. And of course, too, it then provides sources of food that's a lot healthier. Mm-hmm. Again, healthier, more abundant. People find themselves, again, not buying the healthiest food because they're on a budget.
Right. And the most convenient things are usually not the best for you. But and also with food sovereignty, you battle the fact that it's not just a food desert in the term of it's hard to get food there. Like we talked about, that it is a desert climate. It's very specific things can grow there.
And again, as you well know, we are at the mercy of a very short growing period that usually becomes very dry very fast and stays dry.
Right.
And the soil here is typically pretty nutrient poor. Mm-hmm. The one thing we've got going for us.
Oh, you've locked up.
And so there is now, and this is when you really hit the nail on the head when you were saying, do you teach all the science subjects? So it should probably make it pretty easy to understand why, even though I am also a very, very experienced gardener, and I wanted to hit the ground running when I came here. Every single adult who works at my school, it wears a lot of different hats because it is such a small school. And one person can only do so much. Right. And I should never even think that I should be doing it all. And so there is a grant that the school has, and all the Food Sovereignty Project is going to be happening with a large group of people who have time and resources that I don't begin to have. I'll help out when I can, but no, this is not.
To pollinate.
Exactly. We'll have the pollinators. Because I do teach and I coach as well, as you know. Yeah. So,
and that encompasses rural South Dakota from top to bottom, left to right, corner to corner. Every small town, it's all hands on deck. If coming from the biggest city, you had to try out for the football team. I know there's definitely towns where they're like, we don't care if you don't want to play football. We need you to play football. Like
that part.
Whenever they say that there's a fight to separate boys and girls and trans kids by gender, there are some small towns, they need all the kids to play just to get the football team. We don't care what gender there are. We need them all.
When I had my track and field runners doing relay races yesterday, it was boys against girls. But then one of the girls had to go and finish an academic project, and academics come first. So then the anchor on the girls' team was a boy.
Like you've got to have,
because they're practicing, and that's what matters most is they're getting that skill building.
And again, the community you're from, culturally, the thing that the rest of us need to learn is the be good relatives. It takes all of us. And so culturally, if they've been listening to their grandmas, they know that that's not what matters. Gender isn't what matters. It's holding everybody
up.
Else.
That's not an issue out here. No. Again, traditionally there has been, an appreciation of all the gifts that everybody brings to the table.
Right.
And so, no, that hate is not a Lakota value.
Right.
No.
Well, we're coming up on an hour. I definitely think I'm going to have to schedule back with you because I want to know, like in May, how the bees are doing. Like, because I imagine the story of the bees changes seasonally and
well, I got to tell you, we're careening headlong to the end of the year, the school year. So and between that and coaching and getting everybody ready for graduation, I might have time to go to Yankton and get new bees, but as you and you know where I am to Yankton, that is more than a day. That's a day. That is a very long day there and back.
I will help you transport bees. I'm closer to Yankton. I can pick them up and meet you in the middle. Like,
I might take you up on that.
yeah,
I just might take you
I
up
would.
on that.
I want to see how that goes. But yeah, like I want to.
Because when you transport them, you put a little screen over the entrance, and then you just put the seatbelt over these little boxes so they don't move, and then you just drive
Driving
along.
here with you.
Yeah.
Maybe I have a future in bee transport. I believe in the this is a European thing, but I believe it transcends of the go tell the bees, that you need to tell the bees what's going on. And that was my child
Oh my goodness.
when they
I'm
graduated.
going to get all verklempt here, but
Oh, that was when she
do
graduated.
you,
That was her theme of her graduation, was that
do
we.
you know about the telling of the
Yeah.
telling of the bees?
Hmm.
After Jimmy Carter died,
Hmm.
and they told his bee, and
Yep. They told.
that was when it got me. All the whole time, I'm staying strong and just thinking all these wonderful things about this
Right.
great individual, and then somebody sent me something about the telling of his bees, and that is when I lost it. I was like,
Yep.
oh.
Yep. We yeah, 100 years of things he did for the whole world, and they took time to tell the bees that only live that your 3 to 6 ratio. Yeah.
Okay, they pass everything on in their DNA.
Yep. Well, I thank you for chatting with me. We will connect on bee transport, and food
So,
sovereignty.
and forgive the teacher in me, but your homework, you can see bees mating on, there's everything on YouTube. It's fascinating. It's not voyeuristic. It's fascinating. You sit there and you're going,
They wouldn't just be
they're
doing
really
it out in the
little.
alley like that if they didn't
They're
want
like,
us to
they're
watch.
really literally. I know they had to call them drone alleys, didn't they? That sounds so unseemly.
Yeah.
Oh, but now you're watching and you're going, they're both flying. They're like both flying. Oh, Lord, there he goes. Bloop. Oh, my. But it's not voyeuristic because they're
Right.
bees,
Right.
but it's fascinating. So there's your homework.
Now everybody knows what I'll be up to later.
They're in the Super 8 in Mitchell.
Yes, yes. It'll be like, hmm. I know that this is going to change the algorithm for me. My recommended videos are going to go from true crime.
Yeah, you don't even need to use the sex word. You just say queen bee mating
Yes,
in flight.
that's fantastic. Well, I thank you, Stephanie. Thank you so much for your time and telling me about your bees.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for making me a part of your project, especially since I do go, I have two homes. I go home to Maryland for the summer, and then after the summer, I go home to South Dakota.
Yeah,
So, but being transplant that I am, I appreciate you including me because I have fallen in love with this state, warts and all.
there we go. Well, thank you. I'm going to sign Stephanie off and say goodbye to everybody. Bye. Oh my gosh, everyone. That's my alarm going off to remind me what time it is. I do have so much homework. I have so much homework. But also, I do want to remind everybody that throughout this video, we mentioned some very significant buzzwords that are important if you want to learn more about South Dakota. One, what is food sovereignty? Learn about that and how our state really, really lacks in food access from corner to corner. And it's not going to get better without a lot of work. And if we don't work together, it won't get done. So, food sovereignty and food deserts, even in urban areas, we struggle with food deserts and definitely in our rural areas. So, support your local grocers whenever you can. Support your local farms, your CSAs, things like that. But if you want to learn about South Dakota, that is definitely a topic that you should research and come in like Stephanie as a transplant to our state, come in ready to work and come in ready to help. So I still have many, many counties to go. So if you're interested in telling me a little bit about where you live and what your passion is, 605speaks@gmail.com. Just email me and we'll make it happen. So, and now what's left to say other than, buzz off?